So last week, I went to go see Pixar's newest movie, Elemental. At first, I thought it was going to be another generic forbidden love story. I mean, to be honest, who wouldn't have those thoughts? Because, like, the trailers and promotions kept painting it to be that way. So I wasn't too excited while going in, story-wise. Animation-wise, yes, since personally, I love the designs of Ember and Wade. So I went into the theater thinking nothing much, and then finally, I finished the movie. Did I just cry over Fire Girl and Waterboy? No. This can't be. But oh boy, that sure was the case. Yeah, look, this movie is not like a full forbidden love story. This movie is more of an immigrant story, and the struggles and expectations children of immigrant parents can feel. Like feeling like you need to make your parents proud because they sacrificed and did so much for you just to come to this country or place. Moreover, trying to keep your cultural foundations while trying to fit into a completely new society. Mixing cultures together, racism. You get the point. This movie is something more than what it was advertised to be. And that really hurts because the advertising for this movie did it so dirty, bro. Like, why? Why paint it out to be something that seems generic or something that we have seen so many times before? Not to mention, this movie is based on the director's, Peter Sun's, personal experience growing up as a second-generation Korean immigrant in New York. I even read the personal letter he wrote for his dead parents, who sadly died during the production of this movie. And this movie was like a love letter to his parents. It's clear that Peter Sun put a lot of love and care into this movie, only for the ads to treat it like something else. I'll get more into it later. For right now, let's talk about the actual movie and what I actually think about it. This is my review for Pixar's Elemental. The movie starts with Ember's parents, Cinder and Bernie, immigrating to Element City. Right off the bat, the couple are already facing a lot of, well, bigotry from the other elements. They get denied housing, people give them weird looks, and their names were just given to them because the Border Patrol person didn't know how to spell their names from their native language. So instead, he gives them like the most stereotypical names. Also, I would like to mention that they came to Element City because where they come from, Fireland, creative name, I know, had like a big storm to the point where it destroyed their houses, so they left to come to a place that was much safer for them. However, because of the discrimination they faced, they start living in an abandoned building, and from there, Ember is born. Her dad builds a shop called Fireplace, and their community in Firetown starts growing. Also, Ember's dad and mom become prejudiced towards other elements because of the way they were treated when they first came to the city. Due to this, her parents don't want her to mix with other elements. By the way, we will get into the metaphors later. Don't worry. Also, this is why Ember and her family are very comfortable in Firetown, because of how they were treated, and because, according to Ember, Element City wasn't made for fire people, because it is full of things that aren't safe or even suitable for them. Not to mention, Firetown is like right under a train full of water, which causes sprays and waterfalls that can actually kill them if they touch it. That's insane! As you can tell, there are quite a lot of allegories for bigotry here, and how certain groups will be casted out from certain places, but let's delve deeper into them later. So now we know that the story is more of a parent and child-focused story, rather than a love story, with themes of prejudice sprinkled in there. The love story is more like a side plot for the main character, to be honest. It's there so Ember can have more growth as a character. And hey, I have to admit, I really do love the concept. It makes the story less by the numbers and makes it more authentic. Side note, by the way, I love how Firetown reminded me a lot of Chinatown. A lot of the structures and just the way it looked in general gave me that vibe. Moving on, Ember grows up, Her dad is about to retire and he expects her to take ownership of the shop once he retires, because it's something that she has always wanted as a kid. But before she can even own the shop, she has to learn how to control her temper with customers, since her temper causes her to explode and ruin the place. And one day, this temper causes her to blow up the pipes in the basement. The flood then brings in a new face, Wade, and the story starts from there. Wade reports the terrible plumbing at the store to City Hall, and they both go on a fun adventure? Nah, it's more of a pursuit of saving her dad's shop and her whole town from flooding, since there is a leak from Element City that is causing water to come into Firetown, and if they don't seal it, they're all toast. Oh yeah, and her dad's shop could actually get shut down because of the plumbing, if they don't fix the problem, of course. This then begins the bonding of Ember and Wade. So, like I said, the focus is more on Ember and her dad than this love story. But Wade is super important because he helps Ember be more like herself. And that's something that I really appreciated about the movie. Not to mention, there was this really cute montage of the two just spending time together with, not going to lie, a banger song in the background. I don't know why, but that song made me feel super nostalgic. I felt like I was in 2016 to 2017 again, playing Roblox on my computer without a care in the world. But yes, I have to admit, I really do love the relationship between these two. I always had a surge of happiness every time I saw these two on screen. And not to mention, both of them had a lot of touching moments. For example, when they realize that the sandbags can't really hold the leak, they go to a very pretty beach to find more sand. But instead, they have a very touching moment there. To be real, I wish I could show it to you guys, because Ember makes a really cool glass ball with a tree inside it. But I can't because, I don't think I'm going to find it. So, I found a clip of the scene on YouTube and it looks like garbage because it's literally a guy recording the scene in a movie theater and I don't want to get in trouble. So, either watch it when it comes to Disney Plus or actually watch it in theaters, or hell, if you want to, just go watch the clip on YouTube because my ass ain't getting in trouble. Anyways, the glass figure was supposed to be the tree she always wanted to see as a kid. A tree that could survive any environment. But fire people weren't allowed inside. So Ember never got to see the tree because of discrimination. The moment at the beach also leads her to realize that glass is much more stronger than sandbags. And I really enjoy the scenes where Ember visited Wade's family and hung out with them. Because from there, she discovered that she didn't actually want to run the shop. Instead, she just wanted to seek approval from her dad because she felt like she owed him something for all the sacrifices he did for her, realizing that she never wondered what she wanted to do for herself, which, by the way, turned out to be glass art. Oh my god. And there was also this beautiful scene of Wade showing Ember the tree she never got to see as a kid underwater. And it was so wonderfully animated. My eyes were enthralled on how the flowers would just bloom every time they swam close to them. The colors they used were so pleasing to me. Just everything about it was amazing. And I am so mad none of this was shown in the trailers. Not to mention the scene where Wade and Ember just touched for the first time was pretty and it felt heartwarming. Overall, I enjoyed the relationship between Ember and Wade so much. It just really sucks that the advertisements didn't give viewers a glimpse of something more, you know? Before we talk about the ending, I want to talk about some cool little details they had in the movie. For example, Ember's father talks in broken English, which I thought was a pretty neat detail. As someone who is also a second-generation immigrant, I too have to help some of my family members say certain words in English, or a lot of the time, I just have family members who straight up speak broken English while still learning the language. So that was pretty nice for me, and even relatable in some form, because the way he speaks is quite a realistic thing for immigrant parents. One more thing. When Ember's parents were about to leave Fireland, Bernie's father was super disappointed in him for leaving. So, out of respect, Bernie bowed to the ground to his father. According to the movie, this is a very big tradition for them. And doing this bow is one of the biggest forms of respect ever. But his father didn't bow back. Instead, he just let them go. And Ember's parents never saw their families again. This part was really sad. Who wouldn't feel like they owe something to their parents after they made big sacrifices like that? Especially when your own father doesn't give you the proper goodbye. So, what happens at the end? Well, Wade and Ember have a breakup scene because she reminds herself that her family would not approve of this at all. And also because she feels like it's her destiny to run the shop. So she just leaves him. The next day, I think? Look, I'm writing this from my memory. Please tell me if I got something wrong in the comments. The next day, Bernie is about to announce his retirement and Ember's ownership of the place. But Wade comes in to crash the party. He tells everyone that he loves her and snitches on her about the fact that she broke the pipes and caused the leaks, which pisses off her dad. So, her dad denies her ownership of the place and doesn't retire. But then the next day, Firetown begins to flood because the glass that Ember used to cover the leak breaks. She goes on her way to save the blue flame and basically risks her life for it. But don't worry, Wade comes to save the flame right before it burns out. So, they stay in this room to be safe, but the room is super hot. So, Wade sacrifices himself for Ember and evaporates. Then, after all of that, her family comes to find her and save her. Ember then finally tells her dad that she doesn't want to run the shop and that she loves Wade. And her dad doesn't even get mad at her. Instead, he tells her that it was never about running the shop. It was about her making a better life for herself. That's why they came to Element City in the first place. Oh yeah, after this scene, you think Wade has died. But Ember makes him come back through the ceiling by saying things that make him cry. And then, he finally comes back and kisses her. And from then on, her father is not racist anymore because a water element sacrificed himself for his daughter. At the end, Ember and Wade say their goodbyes to their families since the couple are going to travel the world. Also, Ember has got an internship to pursue her passion of glassmaking. Something I really found touching at the end is how Ember did the bow to her father. And this time, her father does it back to her, showing that both parties have this big love and respect for each other. After that, the couple leave, and the movie ends. So, what did I think? Well, in my opinion, it's a really amazing movie, and I really loved it. I enjoyed the characters, the pacing was actually good, and the animation was just gorgeous. Though I have to admit, I have some stylistic problems with it. More on that later. I loved having those slow scenes with Ember and Wade. Like, those two just have great chemistry. I also really enjoyed their dynamic. Like, Ember has a more hard-shelled personality, while Wade has a more optimistic and emotional personality. He is like Ember's golden retriever, and I love it. They just work so well together. I also loved that this movie focused more on Ember as a character, because her character development of realizing she doesn't want to own the shop was done so well. Not to mention, the relationship Ember had with her father was also nice to watch. And the way they dealt with Ember's struggles as a second-generation immigrant who feels like she owes her parents something in return for their sacrifices was an interesting concept to watch. I truly applaud these writers. The metaphors, in my opinion, were also pretty good. Sure, maybe the allegories of racism could have been expanded on, more on that later, but I'm very satisfied with what I got. I just know that from now on, this movie has a huge place in my brain and heart. Okay, let's talk about the animation. The animation in this movie is just amazing. Of course it is. Why wouldn't it be? It's Pixar. However, I really do love that Pixar's trying to tip its toes in more stylistic choices rather than more realistic ones when it comes to their art direction for their movies. Turning Red and Luca are prime examples of these, and I saw a lot of that in this movie as well. For example, the characters had very exaggerated expressions, and I found that really fun and very satisfying. The movements of their bodies were also exaggerated as well. It felt so cartoony, and I just loved it. The environments are also very pretty, and Element City looks gorgeous. For example, those trains that run on the water tracks look very cool. And also, that scene where Wade took Ember to the tree, like I said before, was so visually pleasing. But when we got to that scene in the beginning, they showed a shot of an abandoned train. And I'm not going to lie, for a second there, I felt like I was out of the movie. Because, the environment did not match the way the characters looked. The train looked a little too realistic. And you see, that's why I said Pixar is tipping their toes in the stylistic choices of their art directions. Don't get me wrong, Pixar is amazing when it comes to their art and animation departments, but sometimes the environments in their movies, including Turning Red and even Luca, can look so realistic to the point that it starts to kind of look uncanny, because the environments can get too real. Sometimes it just straight up looks like a live action movie, and then it gets to the point where the characters, to me at least, can sometimes feel a little out of place. It doesn't happen in most scenes, thank God, but sometimes when there is a shot that lingers for a little while, I start to notice it, and it feels weird. Look, realism doesn't always equate to better. And I think audiences are starting to understand that with movies like Puss in Boots: The Last Wish and Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Elemental's animation was eye-catching, don't get me wrong, but I hope Pixar in the future goes for less realism and more stylistic choices when it comes to their feature films. I know they can do it. Just look at short films like Out and Pearl. Those shorts have very stylized looks or characters to them that don't fit the realistic norm that Pixar is so used to. Just overall, great animation, but I hope to see them try some new things in the future. Now, let's talk about the metaphors, shall we? In my opinion, I think the metaphors were done really well, with fire people being the lesser ones of society, while water people were the more privileged ones. However, there was a very common critique I saw from a lot of people, saying that the metaphors didn't work because fire can literally kill water, and water can literally kill fire. And honestly, it's a valid critique to have. Another valid critique to also have is that elements legitimately have differences, while humans don't, because at the end of the day, all of us are literally the same. I see why people would have those issues with the movie. However, in my opinion, the metaphors for me still worked because, well, this isn't reality. With animation, you can break reality and make so many different possibilities. And not all of them have to work with real-world things. Look at Zootopia. It's a whole movie about prejudice that uses animals like predators and prey to tell its story. But let's be honest here. Predators and prey actually do have differences in real life. And predators kill prey to eat. because it's legitimately a part of their biology. But when I went to go see Zootopia as a kid, I still understood the messages the movie was trying to tell its audience. Why? Well, again, it's a fantasy world, and I was a kid. I didn't think too deeply about things. Even though in real life, prey and predator have differences, in Zootopia, the metaphors still work because it's a society that's not real, and you can make those metaphors apply to the movie in a way that general audiences can understand, especially children. Because of movies like Zootopia, I grew up to have more empathy for oppressed groups, or groups that are stereotyped. Hell, I sadly had to go through my own fare of discrimination as a kid. Because of these movies existing, I was able to confront that discrimination. This also applies to Elemental. Again, I do acknowledge that yes, at the end of the day, us humans are literally the same, and elements actually have their own differences. But we often forget we're all the same because we all have different cultures, ways of life, and even looks that, quite sadly, often cause humans to be assholes to each other. Kind of like the elements in Element City. And instead of trying to understand each other's differences, we often forget that we're all the same. We live, eat, and sleep on the same planet. We're all made of the same matter, and we all have emotions. And that's something that I think Elemental represented really well in its story, at least in my opinion. Ember and Wade still got together despite their differences. And yes, it's a generic concept, I know, but something about the way Wade and Ember were written was special to me. Oh yeah, there was also another big critique I saw, where people questioned what place do Earth and Air people have in this society, which is also another valid critique to have. And hey, I'm going to admit to myself, it's a world-building flaw, but I'm honestly glad that question wasn't answered, because I would have gotten a huge headache while watching the movie. Thank God, this movie was mostly focused on Ember and Wade, and their families and societies. Look, I like my stories simple, okay? Not everything needs explaining for me. Another metaphor I want to bring up is the blue flame that is super important to this family. Like I said during the plot section, the blue flame represents their traditions and cultures, and keeping that blue flame burning is super important, because that also means keeping your culture and traditions while trying to fit into a completely new society. And honestly, I loved how it was done. Throughout the movie, the blue flame was about to be burned out by accidents or issues, but at the end of the day, it never went out. Hell, it wasn't even Ember or her dad that saved the flame during the flood. It was Wade, and that made me feel super happy. As someone who, again, is a second-generation immigrant, it's really nice to have friends or, hell, a hypothetical lover who supports your culture and heritage, since I'm never going to give up the cultures and traditions my parents raised me in. And that's why I found the ending very touching. Just overall, I thought the metaphors were done really well. Sure, some things can be expanded on, but I don't mind. At least the metaphors pulled off the message really well. And you know what sucks? While Elemental is a really good movie, it's not doing so hot at the box office right now. See what I did there? As of writing this script, Elemental has made $60 million domestically and $50 million internationally, which adds up to about $120 million in total against its $200 million budget. Not to mention, Elemental had the second worst box office opening for a Pixar movie ever. What happened here? Well, there are a lot of factors that are contributing to this, so let's list them out. So, it's editing Ricky here, and you guys are not going to believe this. As of me, recording this line, Elemental has become Disney's highest grossing animated film since Frozen 2, and it beat the total gross of Encanto. That's crazy. So there is hope for this movie after all. Like, that's crazy that it made this huge of a comeback. But a lot of the points I'm going to go through kinda still stand, because, like, it could affect movies overall in the future. So, let's get into it. Number 1. This movie was marketed poorly. I mean, sure, yeah, the marketing was crazy for this movie. It was everywhere on billboards, benches, and I would often see it on YouTube ads. But the marketing did this movie so dirty because they advertised it as another generic forbidden love story instead of advertising it for what it actually is, an immigrant story. Not to mention, the ads for the movie showed the most boring clips from the movie instead of the more pretty ones or interesting ones. Why not show a little more of the beach scene or the one where she is making glass art in front of Wade's family? There are so many scenes to pick from that would make the movie more interesting for these ads. However, the ads made the movie seem generic, so it put a lot of people off. And I'm not going to lie, that's quite understandable. Who wants to go see a movie that on the surface just looks uninteresting? And to be real, I had the same thoughts too, and that all changed once I finally saw the movie. Thank God, word of mouth from other people saved this movie by quite a lot. Not fully, but hey, it saved it by a lot. But the majority of people are uninterested. They rather go see other movies that have bolder and stronger stories. And that goes to my next point. Number 2, competition. Yeah, let's just get straight to the point. This movie kind of gave itself a death sentence by releasing around the same time as Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Do I even need to introduce you to this movie? This movie was amazing, the animation was gorgeous, the characters were fun, just everything about this movie was spectacular. And let's be honest, people would rather go see Spider-Verse than Elemental. Why? Because Spider-Verse has a more newer and bolder type of story for general audiences compared to Elemental. And the animation is basically breaking industry standard boundaries. I think we have all gotten to a point where we are all tired of the same realistic art style. Not that it's bad, of course, we shouldn't let stylistic animation get overused so much, or else we're also going to become tired of it. And I don't want that. Instead, movies should try different styles that are both realistic and stylistic, because that's what animation is all about. You create different worlds, different societies, and just many different things in general. And I hope animation studios in the future don't just copy the success of others. I want them to also come up with different ideas and create new original stuff. We're just going to have to see what the future brings for us. But yes, this movie was really good to me, but let's be honest, there are just other things people would rather go see in the theaters. So in the future, Pixar has to find a way to stand out a little more from the competition and try new things, because if they don't, I'm scared where they are going to be. Number 3. Pixar movies were being released on Disney Plus so often that people got accustomed to just wait and see those movies on Disney Plus. Onward, Soul, Luca, and Turning Red all went straight to Disney Plus, so it created this kind of habit for people when it came to watching Pixar movies. Like when Lightyear came out, it bombed hard, one of the factors most likely being this cycle. And also, let's be honest, that movie was boring as hell. Oh my god. Look, I have to admit, when Lightyear first came out in theaters, me and my family just waited to see it on Disney Plus. Why? Well, because of the cycle. And also because, I'm going to be real with you, the movie looked kind of mid to me. I saw the reviews on YouTube for the movie, and even people's thoughts on things like Rotten Tomatoes or IMDb. This movie was just not that appealing, and the reviews were not helping. So, when I went to go see it on Disney Plus, I was so happy that my family did not have to waste so much money on such a boring movie. Oh my god. And You know what sucks the most? Onward was kind of mid to me, though I know lots of people enjoyed it. Soul meant so much to me on a personal level. Luca was such a fun time for me, and Turning Red was also amazing. All 4 of these movies deserve to have their times to shine on the big screen. They had different ideas and concepts that were entirely new, and had many stories that most general audiences can relate to. But a boring-ass movie that relies on Toy Story gets time to shine. I swear, the world is so unfair. But yes, this cycle is one of the factors that is most likely attributing to its box office failure. Right now, Disney and Pixar are going to have to be a little patient with audiences, since we are all in a post-pandemic world. So, little by little, they will get audiences to come back, but they have to bring better and bolder stories to the table to show people that their movies are worth watching in theaters. And I want to talk about one last thing before I go. I am worried, but also a little excited about the future of Pixar. Look, we all know that Pixar is making a Toy Story 5 and an Inside Out 2. And let's be real, what's the point of an Inside Out 2 and a Toy Story 5? Come on now, that's pushing it. But recently, the CCO of Pixar, Pete Docter, said this in an interview. What's your take on the idea that audiences prefer established IP and aren't as keen on new and original characters like Luca and the Good Dinosaur? Quote, right now, the world seems to want the comfort of what they know, which is sequels and movies based on things like comic books or video games. But all of these things were original at one point. I think it's essential for us to develop new original stories, which are harder to publicize, harder to get people excited to go see them. But I think audiences deserve it. They want to find that surprise, along with the comfort of the expectation. We have our share of sequels in the works. We're doing a sequel to Inside Out, so you get to go back inside the mind of joy and sadness. We have another Toy Story, so Woody and Buzz are back. And we have a few other projects, but it's always a balance. End quote. Look, I'm going to be real with you. I do not want any more sequels or remakes. Well, unless they are trying something new or bolder with an IP that already exists, like Spider-Verse or hell, even the Toy Story sequels expanding on the themes of the original Toy Story. But I want original ideas. A lot of us love these original Pixar movies, especially Turning Red and Luca, which resonated with most of us. I can reassure you that yes, so many of us want original ideas. But I am scared that if the newest Pixar movie, Elio, doesn't do so well at the box office, Disney is going to start breathing down Pixar's necks to rely on old IP. But let's not lose our hopes yet. Look, there are movies in the theaters right now like the new Transformers, The Little Mermaid, and even The Flash that are straight up relying on the old IP. And those movies are not doing so great at the box office at the moment. Hopefully, this is a sign for Hollywood to finally quit relying on old things for just a quick buck, so they can finally start making new ideas. Or hell, even if they want to use old IP, try to actually expand or make something entirely new with it, like Spider-Verse did. Or hell, look at Puss in Boots. It also relied on old IP, but it expanded on the characters and made itself worth watching in theaters. No way. You need to actually make a good movie and make it interesting so people would actually find it worth watching in theaters? That's crazy! But we don't know what the future holds. It's so unpredictable that anything can happen. For now, all we have to do is hope for the best. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video and hear my thoughts. I really hope you go see Elemental. And hell, If you can't go see it at the theater or don't want to, then I recommend watching it when it comes to Disney+. The more eyes on it, the better. I want to hear some of your thoughts about Pixar in the comments. What other things do you think Pixar can do to stand out from the competition? Do you think there is hope for Pixar? Or are they doomed? Or, if you didn't like Elemental, I want to hear your thoughts in the comments as well. I'm always open to hear other people's opinions and thoughts. I hope you guys have a good day and night. And please like and subscribe for more videos in the future. I will see you all next time. Bye bye!